Very excited today. My guest on the First Time Storytelling broadcast is Steve Rast. Steve is a veteran. He's a fellow Bunker Lab city leader in Bozeman, Montana. He's a CrossFit Level II coach, as well as a running and endurance coach. And he works as a financial associate at Thrivent. Steve is here to share the story of his first college graduation in his 30s after his second attempt at going to college. Welcome to the First Time Storytelling broadcast, Steve.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks for inviting me on. And always happy to talk and share stories. So hopefully sharing a little vulnerability will add value for somebody else. We'll see.
It usually does. So let's get started. Obviously, you made the decision to not go to college right after high school, or what was your path?
No, I did. The day I graduated high school, I was on a plane for basic training for the Marines because it's a 3-month-long endeavor, and I was slated to start fall term at college. So going into the reserves, I basically had to cram boot camp into my senior summer. And then I had a great first experience at college. I was at the University of Washington in Seattle, but being in the reserves and trying to work about 3 jobs to pay for college, and being a young man in his 20s at the time, just didn't quite get it done, and didn't really slow me down in life or anything that I wanted to do. But then fast forward about 10 years later, and I was living in Eugene, Oregon, and I got a job teaching at the University of Oregon. So I was an adjunct instructor working in the PE department. And I was like, I was always pretty close to finishing college, and I'm here at the college environment. Why don't I see if I can go ahead and wrap that up? And the ironic thing is that I was an instructor at the university and applied to be an undergraduate while I'm a teacher there. And they actually came back and said, your grades are not good enough to get admitted in right now. So even though I had a say in whether or not people got credit towards graduation, they wouldn't let me go in right away. And as is usually the case, a little bit of rejection is probably one of the better things to happen to you. So I had to go to the community college down the road for a couple of terms and get that grade point average up well enough, and then got in. So it was a roundabout way, and probably again one of the better things that could happen to me.
That's pretty wild and crazy. But let's back it up a little bit. So you decide to join the Marine Corps, but to do so as a reservist to go to college. What went into that decision making to do both? And then what were you going to college to study?
Gotcha. Yeah, the reason why I wanted to join the Marines is of all the people who influence you when you're growing up and actually have a positive influence on you. For me, of the people that I respected, a very large majority of them, the one thing that they had in common was that they were all Marines. And so, when I was evaluating all the potential options of the different services, that was really the only one that was on my radar. And didn't really know too much about it going in, and had a very interesting circuitous journey while I was in. So being in a reserve unit close to the college that I was at, I was basically, they put me in an engineering unit, which combat engineers, and it was actually bulk fuel, wasn't the most fulfilling MOS that one could have in the military. And so I was looking around at some different options. And so my closest option to getting into the combat arms, there was a tank unit on the east side of the state of Washington. And so after about 3 years, I transitioned over to the tank unit and had a pretty good experience there for about 2 years. But as you get in and you have the ability in the reserves, you can kind of change things around a little bit. And so I saw that I could go into reconnaissance. And so then I found this was a long time ago, probably about 20 years ago now, but there was a few different amphibious reconnaissance reserve units that you could join, and I was kind of based out of Seattle, so I could go up to Anchorage, Alaska. There was one in Reno, Nevada, or one in Billings, Montana. But at the time, you had to pay your way to travel to these different places, and I could get the cheapest airfare to and from Billings. And so I transferred to a reserve reconnaissance unit in Montana and ended up earning the MOS, and it was an amazing experience. But just sort of since then,
so
I've
while
always
all
had
of
this
this is
connection to
happening,
Montana.
yeah. So while all of this is happening now, so how long did you stay in school the first time, and what were you studying?
I was studying geographic information systems, so mapping and geography, and I made it. I was probably about 2 terms away from graduating, but then this was also right around 9/11, and a lot of the training in the military was ramping up, and it kept pulling me out of classes and out of term, and starting and restopping. I lost my momentum, and then at a certain point just stopped altogether.
Wow. So okay, we're gonna touch back on that. So you're 2 terms away from graduating, and when you end up teaching at a college and trying to finish up, and you only have 2 terms to go, they're like, no, you have to go to community college. So then when you went to community college, you end up having to take classes you had already taken again, all over again, just to get higher grades in those classes.
Yeah, it was good and bad. I mean, if you're going to college now, usually one of the advantages that a 4-year university or college has over a community college is really quick, the ability to evaluate your previous transcripts and figure out what is applicable. Because when I ended up graduating in Oregon, it wasn't the same degree that I was originally pursuing. But when I went to the community college, they didn't have the ability to evaluate your transcripts. It was like a 6 to 9 month delay. So I basically just had to take classes that would get my grades up, but weren't applicable. The cool thing is that I discovered going back is that now they have like an A+ option. So rather than a 4-point grade average you can get in college, you can actually get like a 4.3. And so originally, like when they were estimating, I was probably going to have to go to community college for 3 quarters to get my grades up, but I actually did it in 2, get it up to an acceptable level, and then found out about 2 days before spring term started that I was getting admitted into the school where I was teaching, and so jumped on it and had already enrolled at the community college. So I had to drop those classes and try and enroll in other classes at the school. And so then switching into a new major where you have to have a certain number of credits in that. And the degree that I got is in public policy planning and management. And so it was a really good program. It's kind of a jack of all trades degree, but most undergraduate degrees, you need about 180 credits to graduate, and then certain numbers in your major. And then I think by the time I was done, I had about over 300 credits. So plenty going on there.
All over the place. Now, what I love about what you're explaining your story is that it's, it doesn't have to be a direct path. And if you do have a military background, your path to getting a college degree might zoom a little bit all over the place. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can still get to that graduation and that degree. Just enjoy the journey of learning and going through that. But what was it like to find yourself in a community college with all your military experience as a 30-something-year-old?
It could certainly be a blow to the ego if you let it. But, the first time I went to reconnaissance school, I didn't make it all the way through. And so I had to go back and earn it basically a second time. And, I've been through enough things that I know that even if you don't succeed the first time, there's still always a way to do it. And so even though, I'm at a community college and it's not my ideal, it was totally okay to deal with that and to be there, because again, I knew it was a means to an end. And then even when I got to the university, luckily I found a few other grizzled old veterans who were kind of doing the same thing. And so I was able to take a lot of classes with other people who were of like mindset as me. So it ended up being just fine. But again, the thing I kept reminding myself is if you're going to let it get it down, it'll get you down. But if you make up your mind not to let it and to just find a way to drive on, you'll be okay.
Yeah, well, so because my journey through getting my degree, I got my associate's degree from Copper Mountain College in 29 Palms, and they accepted, it was a community college, and they accepted a lot of military experience for credit. And so that and some of the classes, I was able to get my associate's degree, and then I was able to apply for the meritorious commissioning program, and again, I got commissioned. Then the Marine Corps hooked us up.
Nice.
And I got augmented, and then I got promoted to captain, and I didn't have my bachelor's degree. By the time I went to get my bachelor's degree, I'm in New Orleans. I'm a major in the Marine Corps now in the reserves. And same thing, when I gave them my transcript, they're like, oh, this doesn't count. They're like, how did you even get some of these credits? And it was starting over. And same thing, I was in my 30s. Like I said, I'm a major now in the Marine Corps. And I felt like a failure at first. I felt like because I had failed as an entrepreneur, like now I was in college. I guess I never believed that I would ever need a college degree. But it was like, the 9/11 GI Bill, they're going to pay me to go to school. It'd be crazy not to do this, finally get my bachelor's. And I found it was nice. And I found it a lot easier being in my 30s doing it, because I was so used to managing so many different things that, 4
Absolutely.
or 5 classes, someone that's a teenager or in their early 20s, they're complaining because it's such a huge workload. And you're like, oh, this is nothing. What's so hard about this?
Yeah.
So now
you want something done, you hand it to a busy person.
Yeah. So now, how did you get the job at a university without having the degree?
So I was teaching in the PE department, and it was just an odd circumstance. But when I moved to Eugene, my next door neighbors, the husband was the head strength and conditioning coach for the athletic department, and his wife was the head of the PE department. And I helped open up a gym in town. And so she came to the grand opening and heard me speaking and doing some other stuff. And she was like, hey, we could really use you over here. And so I started the application process, and they're like, oh, you don't have a degree? But she really helped kind of usher me through the process, because I did have so much experience, they gave me a waiver.
Now, interestingly
So
enough,
it was
you
like
also decided to
being a
not
warrant
get,
officer.
yeah. So you decided to not get your degree in anything that was health related. What went into that decision making?
Um, it was in a word, scale. So, I knew enough. I mean, on the health side of things, I've been doing that for 2 decades. And I know what it's like to work with somebody and to change their life, through behavior change and modification, a little bit of education, but really empowering them. But that's a one-to-one relationship. And so to scale, I wanted to be able to affect more people. And so that's why I got kind of on the policy side. And then I haven't told this part of the story yet, but immediately after graduation in the last year of my undergrad, and I was using the VA voc rehab program, which is even better than the post 9/11 benefits. I went immediately into an MBA. And so I earned my MBA from OHSU, it's Oregon Health and Science University. So that's the medical school in Oregon. And they actually had an MBA in healthcare management. And so I knew that if I really wanted to affect change on a larger scale, it was probably going to be more policy or within the healthcare side of things. And healthcare is basically a big black box if you're outside of it. And I was like, I wanted to get in and I wanted to learn it. So I was in this MBA cohort with doctors and nurses and dentists. And then I was like the PE guy in this odd cohort. But that was a really great experience doing that. And then that leveraged me into working on a big health coaching project internationally in Singapore at the same time that my family, we were moving from Oregon to Montana. So just an odd turn of circumstances. So now I'm in Bozeman, Montana.
It's been quite the journey. So now let's just capture the moment that you're done. You take your final exam and you're done. What did that feel like?
Oh, anticlimactic. Like I didn't attend my college graduation. I actually took my family and we went on a cruise instead because I wanted to have more family time. Because I had 2 young kids, and I had them come to my MBA graduation. That was a little bit more important, but I was just like, I knew I was going to be going right back into school after that summer, and so it wasn't quite the moment that one would expect. It was just like, well, that's done. What's next?
All right. Well, fair enough. Yeah, I remember I didn't attend the graduation either. I've just never been that type of person. I don't like those type of events. So I've only ever gone when I was being forced to. The only thing I fought for was my OCS graduation. So I had an injury and the commanding officer was trying to get me to sit it out. And I was like, hell no, I am marching across that damn parade deck. That's the only time where I fought to be part of any sort of ceremony was that one, but I did not attend. But I do remember, because it was such a long time coming, that it was like, this is a pretty special first. Like, it's my first time graduating from college and I had no desire to go get an MBA. So I went back to my entrepreneurial endeavors. I'm like, degrees don't matter, just learning.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh man.
Sometimes the initials matter, other times they don't. And truly, is it your ability to get stuff done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
If you're going for the job side, on the job side, they like to see initials. But when it comes to starting a business or successfully running a business, that doesn't matter.
yeah. Unless you have great neighbors that can give you waivers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the network always seems to trump everything else in the end if you can go that route. All right, well, thank you for sharing your story, and I think it is gonna, again, it's like I said before, the path doesn't have to be straight and narrow. It can be a lot of zips and zooms and ups and downs, and it's never too late to get it done. So especially right now when things are shifting, ever shifting, going back to school
Man,
and all the free programs that are out there, there's no reason not to take advantage of it. All right,
I
let's
know
switch.
I can add to my resume now that I'm a homeschool teacher because I've got, third and fourth grade, and everybody's doing school from home right now, and I'm trying to find the positive in that. And I think, for definitely one of the failures that a lot of people get when they get to college the first time is coming through the high school system. You're getting your hand held for so much of what you're doing. And I think one of the positive benefits of, being quarantined and doing school from home for these young kids is if they can learn to be more self-starter on a lot of these things. Get help when you need to. Go ask for help when you need to. But if it's just a simple task of just go read for 30 minutes and not, having somebody stand over you and say, gotta get this done, there could be some really positive knock-on effects for future generation of kids, either that could have entrepreneurial carryover or just a greater success when they do make it to college.
I absolutely agree. I did an interview, expert advice for your first time homeschooling, with someone who'd been homeschooling for 30 years and taught homeschoolers. And that interview, I walked away thinking, if I had kids, I would homeschool. Like, quarantine, not quarantine, just because it does prepare a child to learn how to learn, to love learning, to be an independent learner. And that sets them up for such much higher success rate after, once they go to college, or that anything that they pursue in life. I think has so
Mhm.
much greater value. And I think the fact that right now, I think in the future, if you're going to continue to have the homeschool, I would drop the public system way of schooling at home, because that's not the way that you homeschool. So,
No,
if you're a parent, that's something to think about. If you're going to do it, then go the true homeschooling way, because that's going to set you up for better success and set your child up for better success. And public schools don't
absolutely. Yeah.
know how to
I was
homeschool.
starting over, but trying to, if the kids are used to one routine and it's basically trying to scaffold off of what they're used to, and it is still that traditional schooling method that
Yeah.
we're trying to plug them into.
And being
But
able,
it was a heavy lift because we're 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks into it. I can't remember, but it was a struggle at first, but now, like, they get up and they see what their to-dos are for the day, and they actually get right on it without much prompting. So there
yeah.
has been a transition.
And if your kids are loving that, it might be tough for them to go back to the old being a number, you know, in the classroom, because that's what they ultimately end up being. Because that's the big thing that she put out across. It's like, a parent is the best person to teach your child, because you care more than anybody else. So you will provide them all the help, the assistance, the love that they need to learn,
There's
compared to.
definitely been a difference in the expectation of what is expected to them. If you do love them more, you're like, I'm not going to let you get away with that. That
Exactly.
might have been acceptable in that setting, but if I'm gonna let you turn this in, we're gonna have a little higher standard.
Just all in all, beneficial. Yeah. After that interview, I was so blown away. I was like, man, I wish I'd been homeschooled. And if I had kids, I would homeschool, and I'll homeschool your kids. It's just like, just because I love learning. And if you can pass that love on to a child, you're making such a big difference in their life. But all right, let's switch over and play the first time lightning round. So
Okay.
The way that this works, I'm going to give you some first time options. If it's something you've done before, it would be, you would swipe up if you were on the app. If it's something you've never done, not interested, it's left. And if it's something that you've never done, would like to do, then it's right. All right.
Okay. So
Go.
have done up,
Yeah.
not interested left, and would do right.
Yep. All right. Go to a water park.
Have done.
Do you remember your first time at a water park?
Yes. Up.
Well, what was it like? Yeah, share the story.
Long lines. I remember I got like trapped under somebody on a floaty in the wave pool. It wasn't that good. It wasn't the best experience.
Was not a pleasant first experience. All right. Go turkey hunting.
Have done. Up.
Have done. Did you
Yes.
Did you bag a turkey your first time?
I did not. It's much harder than you'd think. And they have amazing vision. And so like you have to be completely camouflaged and completely still. And then to get them into your line of sight is, it's not easy. But I mean, it's of the different hunting experiences, it's a really fun one.
All right. Oh, it's good to know. I did not know that. Okay. Go to an art gallery opening.
Not interested.
Not interested. All right.
I go to an art gallery, but the opening, probably
not. What if it was like
it's probably
friend?
It's probably a reason why I live in Montana and I don't like lines and crowds.
Well, I don't know if there's line and crowds at art openings, but okay. Right. Only because I somewhat know you, I'm asking you this question. Wax your back.
Luckily, I don't have that problem. So I think the closest I came is when we couldn't get haircuts, but Montana is open again now. So I went to my barber on Tuesday, so I'm feeling normal. But I did have my girlfriend trim the neck hair. So I was like, we got to do something about that. That's about as close as it came.
That's as close as you got. All right. Drive a McLaren.
Definitely would do.
Definitely would do.
I've driven a Ferrari, and that I had a grin on my face that you could slap off for a week. So I would imagine a McLaren would probably have a very similar effect on me.
I would agree with that statement for me too. All right. Make soap.
Maybe interested. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I like to have all of these skills. And so like when we were first getting started, there was that mechanical humming. It's because here at my shop, we bought like a freeze dryer. And so like we're freeze drying all these different types of food so that you can have shelf stable food for like 30 years that you made yourself. And so making soap might fall in line, something like that.
Good to know how to do.
Yeah.
All right. Watch a Highland dance show.
Have done.
You have done it. It's up.
Yeah. The instrument that I play, I actually play the bagpipes. So.
Oh, awesome.
So I've been to all sorts of stuff like that, and it's fantastic.
Awesome. All right. Again, I'm only asking you this because I know you. All right. Take a pole dancing fitness class.
Not interested.
Not interested. You know, it's a lot harder than it looks. And I ended up getting so dizzy that it made me sick. Like I on my drive home, I had to pull over and I got sick. So,
like vertigo sickness, or just like your heart was beating so hard that it was like aggravating your like esophageal
motion sickness, vertigo sickness from just spinning. Yeah, which is too bad because it's something I would have loved to have done a lot more, because you need a lot of coordination, you need a lot of upper body strength, you need to be very flexible, but it's like, nope, it's not happening. All right, so I have to follow this one up with a more manly one. So take a whiskey distillery tour.
Uh, would do. I've done brewery tours, and so actually no, I have done a whiskey distillery tour. There's a great distiller in the town of Ennis, which is just west of Bozeman, and there's a former Green Beret who has a distillery out there, and he makes some excellent Montana liquors. And he's got a really great bourbon, and then a Montana flavor. He's got this huckleberry liqueur. So shout out to Willie's Distillery in Ennis, Montana, if anybody wants to check them out.
All right, awesome. Final one. Play Chinese checkers.
Done.
Have done it.
Yeah, we do a lot of board games in the house. I try to do more interaction with the kids and limit screen time. So all sorts of board games.
Oh, that's really great. I love board games. Not so when I was a kid, I used to play them all the time, but I was a very sore loser. So I stopped playing for a good period of my life. And now I'm picking them back up and they're awesome. All right. So next question is today's first time story prompt. So the first time story prompt is your first time at a zoo.
Okay. First time at a zoo. So I grew up in Seattle. They've got the Woodland Park Zoo there. It's a fantastic place. I don't think I remember my first time because I think we went a lot when I was a kid. But I remember I took my kids back there about a year ago for their first time to the zoo that I went to. And my son is like totally obsessed with Komodo dragons. They had Komodo dragons there. And that was just really cool to if a kid is like totally honing in on a certain type of thing that is pretty rare and then they actually get to see it. That's just an awesome reaction. I think we were in that area for like an hour.
Ah, that's awesome. Yeah. So I couldn't remember my first time at a zoo. I mean, I could remember going to the zoo like as an adult, but I couldn't remember my first time. And I'm like, my parents must have taken me when I was a kid. So I Marco Poloed my stepmom and messaged her, and she Marco Polos back, and she's in the office with my dad, and she's just ticked off. I'm just like, she's like, yeah, we took you to the zoo. She's like, you guys were a bunch of basically little pricks and a-holes. She's like, you didn't like it. I'm just like, she was still like, that memory was not a good one that I brought back. And I could hear my dad in the background complaining about it too. And I was like, whoa, sore subject.
No, I think that's an important, parenting lesson though. Like, kids, especially young kids, like they will have just as much, if not more fun throwing a stick in a creek than they would at Disneyland. And sometimes you try so hard to make these awesome experiences, and you go through the hassle, going to a zoo, planning a trip, investing all this money and stress into something, and they don't even remember.
Yeah, and that was their thing. It's like we spent all this money and we all this planning, and we were so excited for you guys, and so it was. There's 5 of us, well 6, but the 5 that went, the teenage years, so I was in my teenage years, I guess we were not very appreciative, but my youngest sisters were very more little. They enjoyed it. So they remember, yeah, but it was just, I just started laughing so hard because like it was still so clear in their minds. Like, yeah, and I don't remember it at all. But like the first time I went as an adult, I remember not being that much into it. So it's like, take that for what it will. I guess just zoos weren't my thing. So, all right. So final question. How have you been making the best of the COVID-19 pandemic situation?
I have not slowed down. I've been busier than ever during this, and so making the most of it is I think for me is an aspect of planning, because if you're just trying to be reactive to everything that's going on, you're just going to be hair on fire the whole time. So the way that I'm making the most of it is trying to plan ahead, looking at what's on the radar, trying to do as much risk assessment as possible in planning, and then executing on that plan. If you do that, if you recognize what you need to do to be successful, and then you map that out, then you're going to come out of this better than before.
So how does great advice. How have you been doing that?
Really managing my schedule. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm keeping up with my fitness. So I've got a whole gym set up in my garage. So not having the commute time of going to a gym and just getting stuff done at home, getting that done. I recognized early that with my kids, I had to do their stuff first. And I could not try and work concurrently while they're doing stuff, especially at the very start. And so I dedicated my time to helping them finish what they needed to get done first. And then I basically have two businesses that I'm running. And so then just blocking out the certain tasks, recognizing what needed to get done, prioritizing, and then blocking out the time for those. And, sometimes by the time the day is done, it's 7, 8 o'clock and you've just been going hard all day and you're cross-eyed from looking at a screen and just gotta have a little bit of downtime.
Ah, well, awesome. Definitely sounds like you've been extremely productive and making some good things come out of it. So I appreciate you coming on the first time storytelling broadcast and sharing your story.
My pleasure. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in person sometime soon, either down in Vegas or at Bunker Labs convention or something. So it'll be good.
Yeah, whenever we are free. I still need to make it to Montana. It's one of my 4 states. So
Montana's open. I had dinner at a restaurant last night. It was awesome. My girlfriend and I were going to go stay at a lodge tonight. And, it's a good place. They did a lot of things right. So Montana has like the lowest infection rate in the lower 48 and everything's opening back up. So it hasn't been that bad and they've been all right here.
Yeah, and it's got great outdoors, so you can count me in. All right, thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Dan. Have a good one.